Hi, it's Mark Coman from Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy, and we're here to talk about lenses. When we talk about lenses, we're here to talk about photography. And the lens I want to talk about today is a macro lens. People ask me all the time. We were at the zoo yesterday, and I had my 40 questions about what is a macro lens. How does a macro lens work? What do you use with a macro lens? Well, a macro lens is made to photograph small subjects, small things, up close. We've all tried with our regular lens to photograph, and you can't get close enough. The lens goes in and out of focus and then stops, and it's still blurry. A macro lens will get us closer. A macro lens allows us to explore up tight. A macro lens allows us to get in close to things. A macro lens is for portraits. A macro lens is for details. A macro lens is for flowers, insects, stamps, coins, all that kind of cool stuff. And I love a macro lens. I think a macro lens should be in everybody's camera bag. Macro lenses run anywhere between $250 and $2,000, depending on your camera and the lens you want. But it's not about the lens, it's about the pictures. And I love a macro lens because it allows me to do great details. It allows me to get in close. This was at the Auto Museum Photo Day we did last year at the Auto Museum. Fantastic image. This was from the Garden Photo Fest. An amazing image made with a macro lens. On a very small leaf about this big, you can see those are water droplets. How cool is that? Think about this with flowers or coins or stamps. And one of the things I also love about a macro lens, it's a very powerful portrait lens. So my macro lens is my go-to portrait lens because I have my macro with me most of the time. So here, not only people, but animal portraits with a macro lens. So let's talk about the different macro lenses. I recommend if you want to do close-up photography, macro photography, you buy a dedicated macro lens. Some of your lenses have a switch or an adjustment on them to put them in the close-up or macro mode. A true macro lens is going to give clearer pictures close-up. It's going to give better focus close-up. It's going to be easier to use. It's going to get you really super close-up. A normal macro lens, this is a Canon 60mm 2.8 macro. It's a great lens, a fantastic lens. And if I want to photograph a dollar bill, I just come right down. You see the dollar bill right there. Boom, I photograph. And I'm closer than what you could get with your normal camera. But look how close I can get. I'm way in close, right there, focusing on George's eyeball. There you go, in close on George's eyeball. You noticed I was about this far away with a 60mm macro. So this is a normal macro, $500–600 usually around in the market. Canon has a new lens, a 35mm macro. It's a little bit less money. It's a little bit smaller. Now this will only fit on the APS-C style Canon cameras. Nikon has a 40mm 2.8 macro for their DX cameras, smaller, lighter weight. With this lens, it's really cool because we physically get closer to take the same picture. And I like it, it's really nice. You see how close I am? And one cool thing Canon has done with the 35 is they've added a light to the front of it because when I get so close, there's not a lot of light and you need that light in the picture. So there you go, you can see George Washington's eyeball. But if you notice, how close was I to the subject? I was inches, mere inches to the subject. And that's okay for some things. But if I'm photographing a flower or an insect or an animal, you can't get that close. So my favorite macro lens of all time, the lens I carry with me all the time, is a 100 or 105 micro or macro lens. So Nikon, it's a 105 micro, Canon, it's a 100 macro, and this is an extremely versatile lens because it again allows me to photograph George Washington, but you can see that I am farther back. I'm now about a foot away from George Washington so that I can get a closer shot without disturbing the subject. This is also a great portrait lens. So I'm about 5 or 6 feet away from a headshot. There's Johnny right there. Boom, right here. It's a beautiful headshot of Johnny from that distance, right? From 5 or 6 feet away with a 100mm or 105mm macro lens. If you're like me, you love all kinds of photography. And flowers and close-ups is part of what you want to do. So that's why in my bag all the time is a 100 or 105 millimeter macro lens. I recommend that that's a lens you put on your Christmas list, your birthday list, anniversary list, or when you get the money, come on down to Paul's Photo and we'll get you hooked up today with an amazing macro lens. Because macro lenses are powerful in photography, they make great pictures, and they're a lot of fun to use. Mark Coleman from Paul's Photo and the Creative Photo Academy wishing you good luck. And remember, great pictures are just a click away.